Welcome to the British International Sports Medicine Academy. In this lesson, we'll be covering the Level 2 unit, Anatomy and Physiology for Exercise. This unit forms part of our Level 2 Certificate in Fitness Instructing, as well as our Level 3 Diploma in Personal Training. Let's begin with the skeletal system. Let's review some of the skeletal facts we covered in the previous lessons. Remember, we have 206 bones within the body. We also have two main forms of connective tissue: ligaments, which connect bone to bone, and tendons, which connect muscle to bone. We also have cartilage that covers the ends of the bones at a joint, and we classify our skeleton in two separate sections: axial and appendicular. Let's look at our bones. Beginning at the top, we have the cranium. The cranium protects the brain. Moving down, we have our clavicle that sits right at the top of the chest. Moving down the midline of the body, you'll feel the breastbone, which is the sternum. That's right between the rib cage. Then you have your rib cage. Now let's cover our arm bones. The bone within our upper arm is called the humerus. The bones within the forearm are called the radius and ulna. Moving down to our pelvic bones, we have the ilium as well as the ischium. The bones within our legs are called femur, tibia, and fibula. The femur is the longest bone in the body, and the tibia is a load-bearing bone within our lower legs, supported by the fibula. We also have bones within our wrist and our ankles. So our wrist bones are called carpals, our hand bones are called metacarpals, and our fingers are called phalanges. The bones within the ankles are called tarsals, the bones within the feet are called metatarsals, and the toes are also called phalanges. Looking at the image on the right-hand side, you have your scapulae at the top, which are your shoulder blade bones, and you also have your vertebral column. The vertebral column protects our spinal cord, and it is split into different sections. So you have your cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and at the base of the vertebral column, you also have your sacrum and coccyx. Do you recall the main functions of our skeleton? We covered this in the previous lesson. We went through movement, storage, structure, protection, and production. We also covered the axial and appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton is pictured on the right-hand side. We have 80 bones within our axial skeleton, consisting of our cranium, our vertebral column, our rib cage, as well as our sternum. The main function of our axial skeleton is protection. Now let's look at the image shown on the left. That's our appendicular skeleton, which consists of 126 bones, including the bones within our shoulder girdle, our arms, hands, and the pelvic girdle, as well as our legs and our feet. The main function of the appendicular skeleton is movement. On this slide, we've shown an image of the vertebral column. Do you remember the regions within our vertebral column? We have 5 separate regions: the cervical spine, the thoracic spine, the lumbar spine, our sacrum, as well as the coccyx. Within the cervical spine, we have 7 vertebrae. Within the thoracic spine, we have 12 vertebrae. Within our lumbar spine, we have 5 vertebrae. Within the sacrum, we also have 5 vertebrae. And within our coccygeal or coccyx region of the spine, we have between 3 and 5 vertebrae, depending on the individual. We have 33 bones in total within our vertebral column. Here we have a neutral spine, meaning all of the 4 natural curves within the spine are in proper alignment. This is important when explaining to your client proper technique. You always want them to try and aim to maintain a neutral spine throughout all exercises. The curves within the spine are named after the regions that they fall within. So we have a cervical curve, a thoracic curve, a lumbar curve, and a sacral and coccygeal curve. When observing your client's posture, you may come across these 3 postural deviations. So in the first image to the left, we show the neutral or healthy spine. The next image is showing kyphosis, which is where you have a hump within the upper back or thoracic spine. The next image is called lordosis, where you have exaggerated curvature within the lumbar spine. Kyphosis is usually caused from overflexed pectoralis muscles or your anterior deltoids as well, and a lack of range of movement within the shoulder joint as a result. So your upper back muscles will tend to be over-relaxed. Lordosis can be caused by abdominal adiposity, so fat deposits within your belly region. It can also be caused by pregnancy because it shifts your center of gravity forward and could put additional pressure on your lumbar spine. Scoliosis is usually a condition that is present from birth. In this image, exaggerated curvature within the spine is shown. So please note that within our industry, at times, we use the terms hyperlordosis and hyperkyphosis interchangeably with kyphosis and lordosis. Bones. Bone classification. Do you recall this from the previous lesson? If so, take a moment and recall some examples of long bones, short bones, irregular bones, flat bones, and sesamoid bones. Here's some examples. So the humerus is an example of a long bone, as well as the femur. Examples of short bones can be found within the wrist, the carpals and tarsals. Irregular bones have very complex shapes. Examples include the bones that form our vertebral column, as well as some of our facial bones. Flat bones are usually found in areas to provide protection, such as our sternum, as well as the ilium found within our pelvis. Flat surfaces are also really good for muscle attachment. Sesamoid bones are bones that are found within tendons. Do you recall the example given in the previous lesson, the patella? In the previous lesson, we discussed ossification. Ossification is bone growth. Our bones are continuously being remodeled as we go through life, and it's through the action of two bone cells, namely osteoblast and osteoclast. Osteoblasts build new bone, while osteoclasts clear away old bone. Do you recall where this takes place within the bone? Hopefully you just mentioned the epiphyseal plate. So let's look at the bone anatomy. The image shown is the dissection of a long bone. So let's begin with both bone ends. This is called the epiphysis. Now within the epiphysis, you have the epiphyseal line, which is found within our growth plates. This is the site where ossification takes place. You also have cartilage at both bone ends called the articular cartilage that prevents the bones from rubbing together and causing friction. They also allow for shock absorption, and that's another reason why we have spongy bone within our epiphysis, to prevent the bone from shattering upon impact. The diaphysis is made of compact bone, and within our long shaft or diaphysis, we have the medulla cavity. Within the medulla cavity is the site where our bone marrow is produced. Our bone is living tissue and therefore needs a blood supply. So this is found within the periosteum, which is the layer covering the bones that provides the nutrients to the bones. Implications for exercise. Growing bone is vulnerable to damage, particularly within the epiphyseal plate. So therefore, with young people, you should not do heavy weights or strenuous activity because the bone growth outweighs the muscle and connective tissue growth. Also, as we get older, we're more at risk of developing conditions such as osteoporosis or demineralization within our bones. Therefore, for these age groups, weight-bearing activity is very important because weight-bearing exercise triggers the work of our bone-building cells, which will increase our bone density and strengthen our bones.